Welcome back to another episode of the Sask Sports Show on ASTV, brought to you by Southwest Terminal. My name is JayD Haughton, and I will be your host yet again tonight. This week's episode will be all about the conclusion of the WHL East Division Hub Center in Regina. Jonathan Hodgson will be joining me tonight for our last edition of our segment, East Division Hubble Talk. Tonight we will be highlighting some of the players to watch for next year, as well as graduating players, as this will, as of tonight, the graduating players will be finished with their WHL career, as well as the 19-year-olds going forward for next year. Also, we'll be talking about the teams to watch out for next year, and also chat about our favorite moments or moment of this shortened 24-game season. That and much more coming up on the Sask Sports Show on ASTV. And there he is, Jonathan Hodgson. How you doing tonight?
Doing well. How about you?
I'm doing all right. Excited for, I guess, our last edition of our little mini segment that we've created here on the Sask Sports Show.
Absolutely.
Well, as I said in the intro, it is, as of tonight, Wednesday, April 28th, it is the last night of the East Division Hub Center, which I know I'm very sad about because that kind of, it brings an end to a lot of the other divisions closing out their season. And no, it's sad to see that WHL hockey is almost over.
Yeah, it's obviously a little bit of a sad time, but I think for the most part, there's a lot to be grateful for, and like you said in the open, that we do have some moments to look back on now, and we all kind of got our hockey fix, and some of the prospects got some action in. So yeah, of course, and I think we'd be lying if we said there isn't still a level of uncertainty for next season, which is kind of mind-boggling to think about, but that's kind of where we are. So yeah, a little bit disappointing to have it wrapping up, but grateful we got it, and grateful with the 2 games that are going on today as we do this. Every team in the East Division Hub is going to get their 24 games. So it is what it is, and it went off pretty well.
Yeah, and I got to give a shout out to the city of Regina and the Brandt Center, where they held the hub as well. They didn't have any COVID cases, from what my understanding. No teams had to miss any time, and so that's a great success in my eyes for that Subway Hub Center. Which, there was hockey basically every day, if it was 1 or 2 games of the East Division. So, and then we had other games with other divisions going on every night as well. So it was exciting to have WHL hockey on I guess a nightly basis, you could say, where usually, you would get a game maybe on a Wednesday, on a Monday, possibly on a Tuesday, but that Thursday or that Friday, Saturday, Sunday were the big days for WHL hockey. But it was kind of a weird season, and it was nice to, get hockey all the time.
Yeah, it came at you fast and furious, so it was fun while we had it. And of course, the other divisions are still finishing up. They still have a varying amount of games. I think 1 or 2 of the divisions still have almost half their season to go. So there is hockey to pay attention to in other places for a couple of weeks yet. But yeah, like you said, both you and I think we both know some people who've been fortunate enough to make their way into the Brandt Center in the East Division Hub and cover games. And yeah, just the extraordinary effort that's gone in to putting this hub on in Regina, and it's gone off near flawlessly. So great work by everybody there.
Well, and you said that some people that we know personally were able to make their way into the Hub Center, and one of them being Phil Andrews, which I just got to plug my computer in. My battery's almost low. Excuse me, everyone. I apologize. But anyway, sorry about that.
Technology and stuff.
Yeah, I know, right? I completely forgot to plug it in before I started doing this. But anyways, a guy by the name of Phil Andrews, he's been the voice of the Regina Pats for the last 10 years. I just wanted to give a shout out to him. He voiced his last game last night with a 6-4 loss to the Regina Pats. And, now he has finished his WHL broadcasting career. I know he'll probably still be involved in some sort of capacity with the Regina Pats because he was, a fan favorite and just, an amazing voice. I remember when I had him on the show, he was, I didn't know how old he was. And then I heard his voice, when you hear his voice and then you meet him personally and he's only just over 30 and you're like, wow, I thought you were like 60. So just a great voice, a great human being in general. And, congratulations to him and his family and, being a part of the Regina Pats organization for so long. So congratulations, Phil the Thrill.
Absolutely.
Well, I guess we should get down to business, obviously talking about the wrapping up the end of the East Division Hub in Regina, the Subway Hub Center. And, as everybody probably knows, the Brandon Wheat Kings have clinched the top spot in the East Division. And they finished with a 18-3-2 record and 38 points. Their last game is, as we speak right now, against the Saskatoon Blades. So if the Blades win, they will get up to, I think it's 33 points and third place in the East Division. Is that correct?
35, I believe.
35, excuse me. They're at 33 right now. But anyways, and then obviously they had a terrific season. They were led by Ben McCartney, 37 points, 13 goals, 24 assists. Ridley Gregg, he was second in scoring with 30 points. He had 10 goals and 20 assists. And Braden Schneider, obviously, they will be losing Braden Schneider because he's going to go on and start his NHL career next year. But Ridley Gregg is only 18. He turns 19, I think, in May. And Ben McCartney is only 19. So they might be able to get him back for next season as well as Nolan Ritchie. He's an 18-year-old. He can come back for his 19-year-old season next year. And he was fourth in scoring with 26 points. So all-around effort, like we've talked about with the Brandon Wheat Kings this season, being a team, like an all put-together team that has been able to win consecutively. Obviously, only 3 losses on the season. And then 2 overtime losses as well. But they were looking hot. And if the season continued, I don't know where they would finish, but I imagine there would be a heated race between the Ice, the Blades, and the Wheat Kings. So that was, and speaking of the Ice, they finished second in the East with, they finished with, I think it was 37 points. Just 1 point shy of the Brandon Wheat Kings, and they were led by Peyton Krebs. He had 43 points, 13 goals, and 30 assists. He's obviously they're going to lose him next year, going on to hopefully start his NHL career with the Vegas Golden Knights. I imagine the Ice were thrilled that he was able to come back this season. And Connor McLennan, he 33 points on the season. Owen Peterson, he had 31 points, and Connor Geekie, the rookie, fourth in scoring with 23 points. Just kind of hearing those numbers, how do you feel that these teams finished the regular season as well as just how they played this season?
I think everybody, played up to expectation. You went through a little bit on the big 3 at the top, and obviously all 3 of them have some real top-end talent that they're going to lose, and we'll dive into them more as we go on here. But I think if you look top to bottom, it kind of played out how we thought, with Brandon, Winnipeg, and Saskatoon being the big 3, and Brandon found a way to put together a streak at the end and eke out Winnipeg. They're going to have to retool all 3 of them a little bit going into next year, but they're all in pretty good shape. But as I look a little bit lower, there were improvements from teams like Regina and Moose Jaw and didn't show up a whole lot in the standings yet this year, but Regina 9-12, 2-1, and of course Connor Bedard leading the way there going forward. They're in good shape to start heading forward up the standings again. And I look at Moose Jaw, and they're in a sneaky good position. They finished 8-13-3 in sixth place, but they have a great young core, and they also possess the Victoria Royals first round draft pick this summer. And of course, that's notable because the Victoria Royals right now are the last place team in the Western Hockey League. Now, there are rumors going around, or reports going around, that the WHL might go to a lottery system for their draft. So the Royals, if they finish last place, may not be guaranteed that top pick, which would go to Moose Jaw. Moose Jaw acquired that pick as part of the haul that they got last season in the Braden Tracy deal, sending him to the island. So with everything Moose Jaw already has in place, which we'll get into, if they get a top draft pick, and if they hit on that pick, obviously a little bit more difficult of a year for scouting and stuff, with the lack of games played by a lot of prospects. But they put themselves in a really good position to move up quick.
Yeah, and we've talked about, on the few segments that we have had, about how impressive Moose Jaw can be in the future. They have some young, offensively gifted scorers like in Braden Yeager, and they're obviously, and they got a good goaltender in Boston Belois, and you're right, they could make some headway next year along with Regina to move further up the standings than where they've been the last this year and last year, so the last couple of years. And speaking of those young, talented players, I kind of wanted to throw a stat out. In the rookie scoring race, 9 out of the top 10 rookies in the rookie scoring race, I guess if you want to call it, are all from the East Division.
Yep.
So that is an incredible. We've talked all season about how these kids have been allowed to play a full WHL season, even though it's only 24 games, and 9 out of the top 10 are from the East Division. So that is going to be very exciting for these kids once they blossom into, first line players, and they're getting 60, 70, 80, 90 points a year. I imagine Connor Bedard isn't far from that if he gets to play a full 68 games. But yeah, no, Connor Bedard led the pack, obviously, with 28 points. Connor Geekie in second with 23. Matthew Ward from the Swift Current Broncos. I will be talking more about Matthew Ward later in our segment. But he was third with 21, and then Zachary Benson from the Winnipeg Ice with 20 points. So just by looking at those numbers, and you never know, it could have been a freak year or whatever, but I have to say that that's pretty impressive. And that's given light to the East Division, where they have all this young talent going there instead of, going to Alberta or BC or even down in the coast. So it's nice to see all that nice, young, skillful talent that will put fans in the stands here in the East Division.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the key to sustained success in junior hockey, and certainly in the WHL, is getting your organization to the point where you can create waves of talent to replace each other as you lose players to hopefully the NHL or long-standing players who age out. Getting waves coming in so that you can replace and keep rolling, and you're seeing that throughout the East Division. I look at Winnipeg, and they are set up to be a powerhouse. Even though they're going to lose Peyton Krebs, I don't think they're going to lose the step next year. Saskatoon has really they've really proven under Mitch Love and Colin Priester they know how to develop talent and find talent, and they also know how to blend that in to replace established talent that leaves. A couple of seasons ago, they lost all 5 of their top scorers, and they replaced them with guys like Kyle Kinkovic and Tristan Robbins. And like I was saying, Moose Jaw is starting to line up fairly well. Regina has the headliner, and a couple of other pieces starting to come together. So yeah, there's a lot to look forward to as we hopefully get back into full or at least partially populated rinks here in the near future.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to get fans in the stands to actually watch these kids live instead of, on a screen or on your TV in the near future. But kind of moving ahead in the show, it's everybody's favorite time here on the Sask Sports Show. It's commercial time. So we're going to take a quick commercial, and then we'll be back with the sector kind of, moving forward with some more topics that Jonathan and I will talk about the Subway East Division Hub. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy, your world-class academic and hockey training facility created to maximize each student's athletic and academic potential. Blackjack Stewart Arena, home of the Buffalo, is inside the 46,000 square foot complex, as well as a curling rink and other facilities. The students have a unique combination of successful, well-rounded education at Pilot Mountain Collegiate Institute and the professional hockey training in an encouraging community. The years of experience of on-ice coaching propel our students to the next level, both mentally and physically, in a professional environment.
Are you looking for a career in the salon industry? Check out Aveda Institute Winnipeg in the Exchange. What sets us apart is our student mentorship program, 95% placement rate after graduation, real-world salon experience, and network of 7,000 salons and spas. You will learn creative cut and coloring, latest trends and techniques, social media marketing, fashion shows, photo shoots, and more. Now accepting applications for 2018, so check us out and book your tour today. Aveda Institute Winnipeg. Hair school the way it should be.
And we're back here on the Sask Sports Show here on ASTV with East Division Hubble Talk with Jonathan and I. So coming out of the break here, Jonathan, I know you kind of want to talk about, for kind of getting into more depth about these graduating players and these 19-year-olds coming up. So, kind of coming out of commercial, let's talk about that.
Yeah, I thought being the end of the East Division season would be a good chance to acknowledge the graduating 20s, as well as taking a look at what the team's situations with their 19-year-old is as they become 20s and teams have decisions to make, and just kind of take a stab at what we think the division might look like heading into next year. So we'll start at the top with the Brandon Wheat Kings, won the division this year. They're overagers, Lyndon McCallum, like you touched on earlier. Also Reed Purplelock and forgive me, I'm missing the first name on Sekundiak. With them losing those 3 all forwards, there's going to be some offense to replace with Lyndon McCallum. But McCallum, 131 games played in the league. Reed Purplelock split his career between Prince George and Brandon. 139 games played, and Sekundiak, 212 games played in the league. So all of them moving on to the next chapter in their careers. Brandon's roster coming into next year, they have 7 19-year-old players on the roster this year. So obviously to get down to the 320s limit next year, they have some decisions to make and some losses they're going to sustain. Braden Schneider is obviously not likely to return as a 20. Their leading point scorer, Ben McCartney, also saw some buzz around him not returning, and also Ethan Kruger, their starting goalie, who's been there for 3 years and became their starter this year and played really well. He'll also be a 20. So they have to decide if he's going to occupy one of those 20 spots. But they have some good options there among their older veteran players. Looking at who might step in and become that next core for them, you talked about Greg and Richie. I also looked at somebody like 2003 born Jake Chason, who had 9 goals and 20 points this year. Nate Danielson in 2004, who had 15 points this year. And on the back end, Vince Iorio, who had 5 goals and 12 points. So they have some young talent that will step in, but they're going to lose multiple top end contributors, which is going to be a challenge. And of course, I said they have that decision to make in goal, but ultimately, I think they have enough talent to step in, and that will progress. That they're going to remain a factor going into next year. We look at Winnipeg. They're overagers: Jackson Leopard, Anderson McDonald, and Carl Stankowski. Jackson Leopard split 252 games between Prince George and Winnipeg, with 116 points and 49 goals. Interesting story: Anderson McDonald played 4 seasons in the QMJHL before coming over to the Winnipeg Ice for this season. He had 196 games played in the Q with 85 goals. So he wraps up his major junior career today. And Carl Stankowski in goal was a little bit of a journeyman in his dub career, making stops in Seattle, Calgary, and then Winnipeg. 41 games in the WHL with 19 wins. Looking at their picture going forward, of course, we mentioned Peyton Krebs is likely to make the jump. So that's a big void there. But they don't have a high number of 19s. They have 5. And so with Krebs being pretty much a lock to move on, they have 4 19s to choose from. But they're locked and loaded with young talent, so I'm not worried about them at all. Zach Benson, 2005 born player, who's going to be a star and is already on his way with 10 goals and 20 points this year. Connor Geeky, 2004 born, 9 goals, 23 points this year. Connor McLennan, the 02 born, he's already set up to be a leader. Carson Lambos on the back end, and also Gage Alexander, the 02 goaltender, who played very well in his the action he got this year. So he looks to be a good option in goal. So Winnipeg, they're going to lose Krebs, but I don't think they're going to take a step back at all, and they may even get a little bit stronger. And the third member of that 3-headed monster this year was Saskatoon, and they're going to be moving on a very key player in Captain Chase Waters, third-year captain, the first 3-year captain with the Blades. Pretty impressive, given that they've been around for more than 50 years. And also Caden Daly and defenseman Wyatt McLeod move on. They're a 19-year-old situation. They have 6 that they're going to have to cut down to 3. And in that group of 6 is Tristan Robbins, who will have a chance to make the Sharks, the San Jose Sharks next year. Rhett Reinhardt, who's found his offensive game on the back end this year. And of course, stalwart goalie Nolan Meyer, who is rewriting the Blades record books in goal. He'll be likely to come back to the 20 if he doesn't get some sort of deal at the next level. But you also look at what they have coming up. The next age group down, Colton Dock, younger brother of Kirby, turned into a regular contributor this year. Brandon Lazowski was in the team's top 5 in scoring in the 2004. Delagor Chandier on defense is going to be a major leader. And top draft picks in recent years on defense, Tanner Mollendijk, 2005 born, and Charlie Wright, an 03 born. So they, again, much like Brandon, they're in good shape. They're going to be moving on some key players, but they're in good shape to remain in power. So looking.
I just wanted to jump in there quickly, Jonathan. Just talking about Saskatoon there, they have, I imagine you've heard of them, but their import player that they drafted last year was Brad Lambert, which he is he's a dual citizen. He's Finnish and he's also Canadian as well. And he spends his time, I think his dad's from originally Kindersley. And then, so he spent some time playing in Saskatoon and then moved over to Finland, where I think his mom's from. But no, it just, he was outstanding in the World Juniors. This World Juniors this year. And, it's going to be exciting if they can get him in a Blades uniform next year, that's going to be another addition to the Blades that I know that probably his family and himself are very excited to start with him, spending some time here in Saskatoon and calling Saskatoon home in the summertime. But, I'm really excited to watch him play. Hopefully they can get him in a Blades uniform, but I just wanted to jump in and just mention that player as well being, could be a key player for the Blades moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was a little bit like Connor Bedard, in that there's a lot of noise around him and a lot of hype and being kind of naturally cautious about the hype around young players. I was kind of in the thought process of, okay, let's see it before I get too excited. And then he played for Finland in the World Juniors, and we all got to see him there, and it was okay. Yeah, he's everything they say he is. So yeah, you're right. If he ends up coming over next year to Saskatoon, that is going to be that would be a major boost for a team that's already, in my books, still going to be at the top of the division next year.
Yeah, and then just, talking about import players in general, it's going to be nice to actually have all these teams in the dub get those import players back. Hopefully, if there's a full 68-game season, it gives them something to come back for. And it gives these kids an opportunity, because last year, some of these import players were key contributors to the team's success, and not having that this year might have, faltered them a little bit. But on the other hand, too, it was a sell job. Like, how do you sell a kid that lives in Slovakia or the Czech Republic or Russia to come back for 24 games and then have to go back? It came down to, the salesman part of it to try to bring them back, which, now we kind of got an all Canadian / little bit of an American thrown in there for the WHL, but it's going to be nice next year for all the teams to hopefully get their import players back.
Yeah, and I think it was just too uncertain with the COVID situation and the different levels of health measures and the different dub territories, that it just wasn't worth the risk to try to squeeze somebody in, even if they had the ability. So you saw a lot of teams early on make the decision to go without imports, just so they could move on try to make other moves and other arrangements. Yeah, hopefully, obviously, hopefully we can get it back to normal and get imports back in, because they add a lot to the picture. But like we said before, we're not as far along in this thing, this COVID thing, as we would have hoped to be probably by this point. So hopefully a lot of positive changes during the WHL offseason, to the point where we can do that next year.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to watch these imports, because I know, like, living in Kamloops last year, they were a big part of our team. They were, it was exciting, and then to see other imports come from other teams as well. To watch them in when I was when they came to Kamloops as well. Guys like Pavel Novak and the goaltender from Spokane. I can't remember his name off the top of my head right now, but he's a great goaltender, and like one of our guys, Igor Zabransky from he came to Kamloops from Moose Jaw, and just to see all these guys, I hope that at the end of the summer in September we can go back to at least half capacity of arenas where we can actually go watch games, because WHL needs, for it to keep running, they need the fans. And there's so many great young hockey players to watch that fans want to watch them live, want to get up on their feet when they score in overtime or win in a shootout or score a late third period goal. Like that's the enjoyment of all these small towns, especially out here in Saskatchewan and in Manitoba as well. That's what people live for.
Yeah, and like you said, these teams are so important to the fabric of their community, to the routines of the people in their towns, and that's especially, like you said, the smaller markets. It's kind of like a little big league situation in some places, where the team in the town is treated like the NHL. So it's been a huge gap in the communities, and of course on the club side, it's been a huge miss, not having the fans to create that atmosphere and that added jump to the games. But also, of course, like you said, at some point, sooner rather than later, it becomes a sustainability thing. I mean, they managed to find a way to get some games in this year without fans, but that's not going to last forever. So yeah, hopefully we can get this thing rebooted, or at least heading back in the right direction as soon as possible.
Yeah, and kind of on that point too, it's we're gonna take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll let I apologize, we kind of went off track after I interrupted you, Jonathan, but we'll let you get back to your kind of breakdown of each of the teams, and we'll be back in just a moment. And we're back here on the Sask Sports Show here on ASTV with I would say my right-hand man here, Jonathan Hodgson, talking about the conclusion of the WHL season out here in the East Division. And so without further ado, I'll let you finish breaking down each of the teams.
Yeah, so we've gone through 1 through 3 as they finished this year, and I'll let you know that at the end of this, I'm going to give my my prognostication on how I see the team stacking up heading into next season and heading into the summer. Obviously, doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot for how next year will actually go, but it's a fun exercise to look at how we think teams will transition into next season. So we've gone through 1 through 3 on this year's finish, and I do have the members of the top 3 staying the same next year. And at the end of this, I'll let you know what the order is. Carrying on to Regina, the Pats, they're graduating Carson Denemy, Kyle Walker, and Roddy Ross. And their 19 situation, they have 5 19-year-olds becoming 20s, including their captain, Nyhoff, and Riker Evans, who's become an offensive defenseman for them this year. So a couple of decisions to make there. And as far as their next wave, Cole Dubinsky had 14 points this year. He's an 02 born. Nyhoff, I figure, will probably stick around and be kept on being their captain. Riker Evans and Tom Cadieux on the back end. There's a little bit there, and of course Connor Bedard carries the load. So with him, that's as good a starting point as you could hope for, and they're going to be competitive. I don't see a whole, I don't see the depth behind him coming together yet. So I think they're still a ways off, and they also have a situation in goal to figure out with Roddy Ross moving on. They have keeper and Welke, both in goal for heading into next year. And they got to figure out if either one of those guys are gonna claim the job and become the guy. Because in junior hockey, a top end goalie can do a lot, and that can elevate a mediocre team, get them into the playoffs, and it can put a good team over the top. But on the other hand, if you don't have a goalie, if you don't have a really good goalie, that can kneecap a lot of teams. So they have to figure that out. So I think they're on the right track. They just have more filling out to do, and they have some important decisions coming up. The Prince Albert Raiders are going to go through a huge season of transition. They're graduating Spencer Moe and Justin Nachbauer from their championship team of a couple of years ago. Both of those players came close to 300 games played in their careers, just over 200 for both of them. Sorry about that. Both from the 2019 championship team, and as well goalie Max Paddock, who came over last year from Regina. He graduates as a 20. In their 19-year-old group, they have 5. But included in that is Ozzy Weisblatt and Keaton Gooley, both first-round draft picks who could make the jump next year. So with 2 former champions moving on, your goalie moving on, and 2 first-round draft picks potentially making the jump to the NHL. If all of that happens, that's going to be a huge void in all phases of their game. So they're going to be in a tough situation. I look at someone like Evan Herman, who tied for the team leading goals this year with Knockbauer with 8. He's somebody who's going to have to be a huge part of the offense next year. But so for PA, heavy losses with the potential to be extreme losses. So I think they're gonna have, I think, some difficulty. Also in goal with Paddock moving on is Sarayenko, ready to grab the reins there. Similar situation to Regina. So I think it's going to be a difficult season, difficult situation for Prince Albert, and they'll have some decisions to make on what direction they want to go. Moose Jaw, like I said off the top of the show, they're in a pretty exciting situation. They graduate Brad Janelle, journeyman who played for 4 different teams in the WHL, Tate Popple and Riley Crane. 19-year-olds, they only have 3. They have Logan Doust and Nolan Jones, who both came over from Victoria in that Braden Tracy deal last year, as well as Boston Belos. And now here's where it gets interesting. I'll go to their young core first, because you have, of course, Braden Yeager, the 05, Korzak, the 02 centerman, Eric Ellery, who led them in goals and points this year. He's an 03. Jagger Furcus, who had 6 goals and 14 points this year, is an 04. Defensively, Matejchuk, possibly Damon Hunt again, and of course Jones. There's a lot there in Moose Jaw. And I said earlier that they have the first pick of Victoria coming up this summer, and if that ends up being the number 1 pick, they could add a game breaker there too. And so when I said that they only have 3 19s, they could bring them all back as 20s, but I think Moose Jaw has reached that point where they're ready to start winning. And how do you do that? Well, we talked about it lots. Goaltending. You can't be serious if you don't have top-end goaltending. And Boston Belos, I just don't think is in that category of a starting goalie on a playoff team. He's been a journeyman with a little bit of subpar numbers wherever he's been. So I wonder if they might be a team that's in the goalie market this summer or early next season, be it a 20, maybe a 20 that gets cash off from some other place. If they bring in a real top flight goalie, Moose Jaw could make some serious noise next year. Swift Current, they graduate Michael Farron, Owen Williams, and Caleb Bullich. They have 4 19s becoming 20s. And the big name there is Isaac Poulter. He's been their goalie for the last 3 years, and he's been a good servant for them. Just kind of in his career, it might be a little bit unfortunate for his own numbers and such that he arrived just as they're in the depths of their rebuild after their championship run. And so his numbers have suffered, mainly because there hasn't been a whole lot in front of him. And as I look at what they have, I think Matthew Ward, the 04 born forward, who had 21 points this year, he's going to be what they build around, but I still don't see enough depth there to be in a place like Moose Jaw yet, where they're ready to start winning. And with Bolter becoming a 20, I think Swift still needs to keep accumulating assets. So where I say that Moose Jaw might be looking at bringing in a goalie, I wonder if Swift Current might look at dealing Isaac Poulter and getting as many assets as they can back for their longtime goalie. Obviously for themselves to keep accumulating assets, but also for him too. He's been a good soldier for them for a long time, and going into his overage career, he has one more year to show what he can do, and hopefully generate some opportunities at the next level. So this would be a spot where they could deal him to a team that's ready to win and that's serious about making a run, and it could work out for both sides. I'm not sure if he would be the undisputed number one on a team that has aspirations, but maybe on a team that has serious aspirations that wants, a two-headed monster in goal going down the stretch. So that's what I look at for them. And as far as how I see it shaking down for next year, just for fun, I think Saskatoon, they've been hanging around. They've been in the mix for about 3 years now. I think next year's the year for them, with the depth of high end talent that is coming in behind their veterans. I think next year I'm pretty confident on Saskatoon breaking through and winning the division next year. I think Winnipeg stays number 2 with the likes of Geeky stepping into prominence there. Brandon, it's tough for me to drop Brandon too low. We said that they do have a lot of possible losses, big time losses, but I'm not going to drop them too far. I'm going to put them in number 3. I think they'll stay competitive, but it's going to be a huge transition year, maybe much like last season. Saskatoon took about a half a season to move on from the Kirby Dock-led teams. Number 4, Moose Jaw. I think Moose Jaw is ready to be competitive, and they're ready to make a run at a playoff spot. They're not ready to be a championship contender yet, but depending on if they get a game changer with their first round pick, if they decide to go get a top flight goalie, I think they're ready to. They're ready to contend. Prince Albert, I would slot Prince Albert behind them. They're a bit of a wild card in that if they do end up getting somebody like Weisblatt back or Gooley back, I think they could still be a factor, but I can't give them a playoff spot with all the uncertainty there. And of course, the alignment was changed this year to make sure that everybody could stay in province to get their games in amid the COVID restrictions. So we're not confirmed on where Swift Current is going to play next year. Obviously, they're normally in the Central Division with the Alberta teams. So if things normalize to the point where they can go back to the Central and play against the Alberta teams, I picture them finishing above Red Deer, but that's about it. I don't think they're ready to be serious yet, and they still need to accumulate assets. And like I said, I think maybe a smart move would be to move on from Isaac Poulter. So they're still trying to put together assets. I don't think they're in win mode just yet. But we look at the difficulties that Red Deer's had this year over in the Central. They're 2-15-2 as of this recording, whereas Swift Current has picked up 6 wins in 23 games this year. Last year, Swift only won 10 games out of 63, so some marginal improvement there. So if they go to the Central, I think they would be ahead of Red Deer. But that's about it. And if they end up staying East, I think they'll have another season where they're at, bringing up the rear in the East. But they are a year further down that line. So my 1, 2, 3 is for next year is Saskatoon, Winnipeg, and Brandon.
Well, Jonathan, I appreciate that. No, it's exciting. It's exciting to look ahead to next season because, and how to see how some of these teams will face, obviously losing their 20s and how many 19s they have coming back. And, these teams are going to have to make some tough decisions. Some of them might just keep all their 19-year-olds because they only have 3. Some have 5 that 2 of them possibly are going to the NHL. So that's an easy decision. And like you said, if, that wouldn't be a bad idea if Moose Jaw traded for Poulter because their backup goaltender in Reed Dick, which is a rookie this year, he has played probably the best. Having Isaac Poulter, to help him out and to coach him a little bit and to show him the way, I feel like it's helped Reed Dick a lot. And like he's a tall goaltender too, and he's very good down in the butterfly. And from what I've seen, he's going to be a possible WHL caliber goaltender where, he belongs in this league. Obviously he was drafted. They let him play this year. And, I think he's proven himself and played the best that he can play, and which is great. And like you said, if they can trade a Poulter to a team like, Moose Jaw or even, to Regina, because Roddy Ross is leaving and Regina's left with 2 rookie goaltenders going into next year, that could be a possibility as well. Having a veteran guy come in on a team that, it's somewhat of a wild card because you don't know how Regina is going to bounce back from this year and how Connor Bedard's going to play. We imagine he's going to play amazing like he did in his few games he played, or his games that he played in the WHL this season, but you never know. But I do like that idea of possible Moose Jaw Swift Current trade. Maybe get some of Moose Jaw's, maybe some veteran guys or even some 18 or 19-year-olds somewhere in that area if they can work out a deal that way. But kind of before I get into my few topics that I want to kind of discuss, we're going to take a quick commercial break is on the Sask Sports Show here and at ASTV. That's how Jonathan and I get paid, is by commercials. So we'll be back in just a moment with some more East Division Hubble Talk.
Are you looking for a career in the salon industry? Check out Aveda Institute Winnipeg in the Exchange. What sets us apart is our student mentorship program, 95% placement rate after graduation, real-world salon experience, and network of 7,000 salons and spas. You will learn creative cut and coloring, latest trends and techniques, social media marketing, fashion shows, photo shoots, and more. Now accepting applications for 2018, so check us out and book your tour today. Aveda Institute Winnipeg. Hair school the way it should be.
And we're back here on the Sask Sports Show with some more East Division Hubble Talk. And I kind of set it up for, after the commercial break, I kind of wanted to talk about, this is being the Sask Sports Show. I wanted to talk about the Saskatchewan talent that has represented the WHL and the East Division in this year's Hub Center here in Regina. So I'm going to start off. There was 43 Saskatchewan-born players that took part in the 2021 East Division Hub, and you think about it in a sense of a hockey team, that could almost be, that's one full hockey team and like 3/4 of another hockey team. So, 1 3/4 of a hockey team represented at the East Division Hub, which is incredible. And within those 6 teams, seven teams, excuse me. Prince Albert led the pack with 9 Saskatchewan-born players, Moose Jaw with 8, Swift Current with 8, Regina with 7, Saskatoon with 5, the Brandon Wheat Kings with 4, and the Winnipeg Ice with 2. And so you can say that Saskatchewan was well represented this year in the WHL's East Division. And here's another pretty crazy stat. Out of those 43 players, 18 of them were rookies. So 18 of them have played their first WHL game, which I think is incredible. To see the talent that we did get to see this year, and most notably, I would probably have to say in Braden Yeager with the Moose Jaw Warriors. Obviously, we talked about him many times. He is native of Saskatoon, and he has showed why. I know Saskatchewan has always been on the map with hockey, but looking at the numbers this year, and I just wanted to bring up a stat of how many Saskatchewan players did take a part in that Hub Center, which is awesome to see. And that credit is due to the very highly touted Saskatchewan Male U18 AAA Hockey League, which a lot of these players came from, the CSSHL, which is the Canadian School Sport Hockey League, which a lot of these players travel from Saskatchewan, go down to, closest one is the Prairie Hockey Academy in Cairnport, Saskatchewan. There's one, and then also Notre Dame as well. But, they go down to the coast and they go play at Yale Hockey Academy or Delta or Burnaby Winter Club or whatever, gain those skills, come back, play, and get drafted in WHL to a Saskatchewan team. And also the Saskatchewan AA Hockey League, I wanted to give a shout out to as well, and many more hockey associations, Bantam AA, Bantam AAA hockey leagues that are in Saskatchewan that have made these young men the hockey players that they are today. So I just wanted to give a shout out. And I don't know if Jonathan, you had any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and from the perspective of the WHL teams, it is so important to scour your own area for your own local talent. If you can't do that effectively in the WHL, it's going to be a struggle and it's going to be a challenge because then you're relying on trades and making moves with established players and trying to get players from other places. So that's that's the starting point, is to mine your own area for local talent, and that's a huge boost to scouting and drafting. So the teams that do that extremely well give themselves a leg up, and then it's kind of like the trades and stuff for established players can kind of act as the finishing piece to a championship team, but your foundation is your local players. So the amount of Sask players in the hub is not really surprising, but I think what is really encouraging is the impact players in the younger age groups that are all coming out of Saskatchewan, and the teams in their home province are finding them. So that's really, really encouraging and really exciting for the future of these athletes and some of these teams.
Yeah, and I agree with you totally. Like, these teams need to, obviously recruit players from their own area, and a lot of them are playing in and around somewhat close to their hometown. Obviously, some are, a lot farther away in Saskatchewan from where they grew up, but most notably from I say Caleb and Aiden Bullich. They're from Foam Lake, Saskatchewan, playing in southern Saskatchewan for the Swift Current Broncos. A good brothers duo. Obviously, one will be moving on. The other one will probably play as an overager next year. But anyways, I kind of wanted to move on to my teams to watch for next season. Obviously, the Swift Current Broncos are not going to be a powerhouse, competitive, kind of give you a run for your money kind of team next year, just because of the rebuilding phase that they are still in. But they did they were able to see their, first round draft pick from Kamloops, BC in Matthew Ward. He led the team as a rookie with 5 goals, 16 assists for 21 points. So they have their, I feel like you kind of mentioned too, and I know you've kind of hit these points too. I'm just going to give my own little spin on it and my opinion, but he is someone like that they can build a team around. He is the Connor Bedard of the Swift Current Broncos because Matthew Ward is there. He can show that he can play. He can put the puck in the net. He can pass the puck. But now they just need to build a team, I feel, around him. I feel like that's their guy. And, it all depends on, draft picks that they have coming up, who they draft this year that, see if, get them into a few games next season. But on the other hand, too, is that the Swift Current Broncos have 10 rookies this season. Like, that's incredible. Obviously, they did have to, a lot of their players did move on, and these are all players that are finally getting their start here in the WHL. But they have 10 rookies, and they had 6 wins this year. So, and that is the joy of this shortened season, because now those kids can come back with 24 games underneath their belt. They might have not all gone for all 24 games. Some of them might have only got 20, 19, 18, somewhere in that area, but at least they got more than just a handful of games of experience. And they can come back, they can go and train for that now this summer. And hopefully, Swift Current could, be a little bit more competitive than what they are. And like you noted too, talking about the Isaac Poulter situation with possible trade opportunities to go to a team that maybe is a little bit farther ahead than the Swift Current Broncos. But I have all my faith in Reed Dick to, he's in a position that Isaac Poulter kind of was, obviously a little bit younger than Isaac Poulter was when he took over the starting job in Swift Current. But I don't know what Dean Brockman's plan there in Swift Current is. They're going to keep Reed Dick. They're going to trade Poulter for maybe an 18-year-old goalie that's kind of been in the league for a couple of years. I'm not 100% sure. Are they going to trade goalie for goalie and have Reed Dick still be the backup, or are they going to give full confidence to him moving forward, knowing that they might not be as competitive next year as maybe they want to be? But in years to come, I feel that they could possibly, kind of get out of that rebuilding funk and get out of the basement that they've been in for the last 2.5 years. So it's going to be exciting times in Swift Current for years to come, hopefully.
Yeah, I think you're right that they're still in rebuild mode, but they have found their guy to build around in Ward. And the trouble I have is beyond the goaltending thing, which you're right, they do have some good options there, is I don't see a whole heck of a lot past Ward yet that are promising to be top end contributors. So with Ward now already underway, can they put together a contending type team before he's done? And that's the challenge there. So it's kind of like, all right, they're not there yet, but on the other hand, they only have, they probably only want to they want to get this done in the lifespan of Ward's career. So they're already on the clock.
Yeah, and maybe when Ward has another season or 2 seasons under his belt, Swift Current may use him as a trading block to get some draft picks or get some some, maybe more highly touted players. Obviously, I can't tell how Matthew Ward's going to be in 2 years. If he's going to be the same player, plus 50% more than what he was this year, or if, maybe he'll have that sophomore slump next year. I don't know. It's hard to tell, but if Matthew Ward plays the same way that he plays in the future, they might use him as a trading block to possibly get something. If depending on where they are in the season, maybe to get their foot in the playoffs finally. And you don't know, and that's the thing, is this is all speculation. But I watched Swift Current. I used to live near Swift Current, and obviously I wasn't there, but I know people that were there for that WHL championship, and everyone that I've talked to says, "Yep, we suck right now, but it was worth it to go all in for a WHL championship because the city of Swift Current was more alive than it ever probably was then before that point." And so that's the risk that teams take, going all in for a WHL championship. Obviously, Prince Albert didn't go the same route because they had a solid team kind of going into the trade deadline. And a lot of their players came back the next season, and they were just as strong that the following season after they won their championship. So I know each teams take a different route. Some go all in with 19 and 20-year-olds for that season, and then some just have a naturally gifted team filled of 17, 18s, and 19-year-olds. It's kind of hard to see. But kind of moving on to my second point, talking about teams to watch, I'm going to go with the Regina Pats. As we've talked about all season, obviously having Connor Bedard is a huge stepping stone for them to get to the next level in the WHL, and to kind of to bring back, I guess, memories of 3 to 4 years ago where they were a powerhouse and they were winning 35, 40 games a season. And now they've been going around the basement with Moose Jaw and Swift Current these last few seasons. But they have at least they have a player to build off. And if Connor Bedard is probably going to be even better next year than he was this season, because he's going to train better because he knows what to train for now. Maybe he wasn't 100% aware of, you can't train for it all unless you experience it all. And Connor Bedard did. And that was one of the big headlines. That was probably one of my most favorite moments of this season, was seeing him score 2 goals in his first game. Nothing could beat that. Like a kid that was, the wonder kid, the super kid, whatever nickname everyone gave him. He came in and, probably had at least 6 shots that game. It was just great to see. But obviously they're going to lose Carson Denemy, which was the majority, helped out with the loss of their scoring this year. But like you've talked about, having the ability, hopefully Logan Nyhoff comes back for his overage season, Riker Evans as well. They were big contributors and leadership group in Regina, so I really hope that they do come back. And kind of before I move on to the goaltenders, I have a little video presentation I wanted to show everybody. This is the highlight of the night from last night, and this was in Phil Andrews' final call. So what a way to go out, to have this kind of goal scored. So I'm going to play it for you, and then Jonathan and I maybe will have a little discussion about it.
45-33. Pats right off the draw. Massier goes through his legs and scores! Oh, what a goal, Carter Massier! Tucked it into the top of the net after he dragged it between his legs, and it's 5-2.
And the bench loved that one, and for good reason. Carter Massier, oh baby. That was sweet. One of the nicest goals we've seen inside the hub here this season as he goes between the...
Oh baby is right.
I've seen that type of goal obviously a lot more in the last, even 5 years. And the interesting progression of that type of move, the stick between your legs and shoot it behind your foot kind of goal, is that has really gone in recent years from a hot dog move, don't do it, something that might get you in some hot water, to something that's just a good hockey. It's a good hockey play now. It's, it's tough for the goalie. You can't defend it. So it's interesting. Obviously, that individual move, great goal. Phil Andrews, great call. Glad he had something like that in his last game. But that's what that kind of goal always brings back for me, is just the progression and the change in the way that the game is played. For that move to move from a hot dog move to just a good goal scorer's goal.
Yeah, and you know what? The I guess the skill that you have to have, like he came off the wall and he had a defender on him, and he had the skill enough to put his body in front of that player so he couldn't get his stick in there. Put the and it all happened so fast. He put the stick between his legs, and it wasn't like a little dribbler that just barely snuck in. Like he roofed it over Stankowski there. And you know what? I have to say, like you said, it was a great call by Phil Andrews, and what a goal to have in your last game as a Regina Pat, as the voice of the Regina Pats. But I just wanted to show that because we're talking about the Regina Pats, and they were down 5-2. I'm pretty sure at that point, or it might have been 5-1, and they still gave it their all for their last game of the season, and that kind of goal was created. So just wanted to show it for the folks at home. But kind of finishing this, I guess, this segment off, talking about the Regina Pats, their goaltending for next year is the biggest question I feel that they have. Obviously, besides who's coming back as a 20-year-old and who possibly they'll trade for and who they draft this year too. But besides all that, their goaltending is probably one of the biggest question marks that will be going into the spring and summer with, is that they have two rookie goaltenders in Spencer Welke and Matthew Keeper. They both, I think they had a total of 9 games. They ran with 3 goalies this year with Regina in the hub. And I think Keeper got 7 and Welke got 2, or it might have been the other way around. I can't remember. But anyways, they played all right. Obviously, Roddy Ross was their big was their starting goaltender, which everybody knew coming in. That's why they traded for him. Because they knew that they were going to have Bedard the next season. And, they were hoping for, a competitive team this season to make it in the playoffs. Obviously, we're not having playoffs, but I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on this, Jonathan, because in my mind, I feel that one of these guys is not going to be on the team next year, and they're going to hopefully I feel that they're going to trade him and probably some other draft picks to get a veteran in there, because if they're going to focus everything around Connor Bedard, they need a goaltender to keep them in hockey games when Bedard can't do all the work.
Yeah, and I think you're right about when they brought in Roddy Ross. I think they were excited by having Bedard, and I think might have tried to jump the shark a little bit by bringing in that top flight goalie to have a competitive team right away. And looking back at Roddy Ross's career, he had that really great jumping onto the scene season in 18-19 with Seattle, and then just never really duplicated that success. And obviously with the alterations to this season, it just didn't work out for the Pats the way they thought. But they were thinking along that same lines of bringing in a quality goalie to hopefully elevate your team's results. But yeah, I think you're right. They have 2 inexperienced goalies, fairly inexperienced goalies in the fold right now. And heading into year number 2 of Connor Bedard, like we said before about other teams, the clock is ticking. And with him, the clock is probably shorter because he's probably not going to be in junior past his draft season. So the clock's definitely ticking for them. And having 2 young goalies, I don't know if that's going to help you or not. I think it would be the better move, like you kind of said, to have a veteran in there, along with one of your young goalies, so you can hopefully be in win now mode next year, and then through the learning process of whichever goalie they keep. Learning process, hopefully mentorship process a little bit more. If they bring in a veteran who then moves on, then they have a succession plan for their goaltending. And then, of course, whatever assets they could bring in if they ended up dealing one of their two young goalies. So, yeah, I'm not sure what they're thinking and not sure which one they would choose. But I think that's a solid plan to maybe look at dealing one of their young goalies, bringing in a veteran goalie, so that they can try to win next year and set themselves up to have a plan for winning in the future as well.
Yeah, and I think Regina's right there along with Moose Jaw. They're just on the cusp of greatness. They just need that extra piece because, and I think for both teams, they need the same thing. They need a good goaltender that can keep them in hockey games, and also just an experience in the playoffs as well. Because, like we talked about before, you need one of the biggest assets of a winning team is having great goaltending in the playoffs. Because it's just like playing NHL 21. In the regular season, it's a cakewalk, but when you get to the playoffs, it's a whole different difficulty that they don't tell you about. So,
yeah,
that's a terrible
sure
thing to come up with, but no, that's what you need for teams to go on and go deep in the playoffs is a great goaltender, and unfortunately, Moose Jaw nor Regina at this point have that in Spencer Welke or Matthew Keeper or Boston Belois in Moose Jaw. So you never know. You might see maybe Isaac Poulter sneak onto one of those teams as well. He's a veteran guy that could be available next year if they get make the right trade for Swift Current. But anyways, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and yeah, you're right on with that. That I think both teams could be seriously in the goaltending market. My first impression that is that Moose Jaw, in my mind, might be just a half step ahead of Regina, just because of the depth of contributors that they already have. I think it's a little bit more than Regina. But when you talk about bringing in a goalie from somewhere else, obviously within the division or within Saskatchewan, Isaac Poulter is the obvious line to draw, and that very well could happen. I mean, Max Paddock went from Regina to PA, but it's almost with watching and covering the WHL this year. It's very similar to the NHL, where each division this year feels like its own league, and it's very difficult to maintain, an eye on all the divisions, and sometimes you forget that, hopefully sooner than later, this is all going to be one thing. Again, like in the NHL, where the North Division in Canada feels like, I've heard mainstream broadcasters compare the Canadian division and the American divisions to basically the NHL and the KHL in field. That's just how far off the radar. That's just how far off the radar it is right now, and it's kind of that way in the dub too. So bringing them back to the goalies, yeah, Poulter could be that guy, but it just as easily could be somebody else from one of the other divisions that we just haven't had occasion to look at this year.
You know what? I know I just kind of wanted to go off topic here and talk about a different league, but I have to give a big shout out to the Vancouver Giants because they have an amazing goaltender in Trent Miner. He was backing up. I can't remember what his name is. It's right on the tip of my tongue. Last year, their goalie from last year took him to the WHO.
Was it David Tendick?
Yes, David Tendick. He, and now seeing Trent Miner play like Tendick did, we're on the goalie train here. Might as well keep going. That he has just played unremarkable for the Giants. And obviously some of the games, like their game last night against Kamloops, when they had a 6-on-3 power play to end the game and they couldn't score. But they lost 2-1. But no, I just want to give a shout out to them. And obviously the Kamloops Blazers and Dylan Garand, he's played great as always this year. And even down in the States too with Thomas. I don't know if I pronounce his name right, but it's Thomas. Is it Milinik or is it just Milik?
I think it's Milik or Milich.
Yeah, Milich. Yeah, he's played awesome in Seattle, obviously with his Team Canada partner in Connor Roulette and goaltenders. There's been great goaltending in all of WHL, but I just thought of that for some reason to give a shout out to Trent Miner. I know.
Well, and if you're talking about Trent Miner, I mean, starting his from March 28th to April 5th, 3 straight shutouts, and one of them was an overtime win. 4 shutouts on his shortened season. So yeah, just amazing stuff from Miner there. And
he's 19 or 18 this year?
He is a 2001.
Okay, so he would be, depending on when his birthday, he's a 19-year-old. Oh, wow. And I feel that he was a good goaltender coming into it, but having David Tendick as your mentor, I don't think hurt his game, probably made it better, because having someone like that to learn from, all the better there in Vancouver.
And I remember in past years when Miner and Tendick were a package deal, battling over time in the crease there with the Giants. I remember closely when I was closely following the Victoria Royals, when those two matched up. Obviously, both teams had a little bit more firepower at that time, but it all came down to in goal. And the Royals at the time, for a really good but 3-year stretch, Griffin Outhouse was running the show, put together one of the best goalie careers in the dub ever as far as win total. But then Vancouver had the 2-headed monster with Miner and Tendick. And yeah, when you have goaltending like that and whoever you put in is going to give you a chance to win. And what they had in those years was in the playoffs, they didn't have an absolute number one. They could split it up in a 7-game series. One guy could get 4 starts and the other could get 3. And that was a tremendous advantage. They had luxury. They had having both of those guys in goal. But now that it's Miner's show with the Giants, he's taken it and run with it.
Yeah, and that BC division obviously is about just over half done. Obviously, I think everybody except Kelowna, because Kelowna had a big COVID scare, so they were outdone for 2 weeks. But I know the Blazers, I think, played their 14th game last night. But anyways, just that whole BC division, and it's one thing out here that we don't get to see them very often. They only get to come here every other year. But that BC division, that US division, is always so competitive. And, some years it's Kamloops, some years it's Kelowna, some years it's, it's Victoria. And like we've talked about before, no one can go into Victoria and win back-to-back games. There's something about it. The Blazers never could. They'd either win one and then lose one, or lose both. But they could never. It was a hard place to play. It was, and then Vancouver obviously was so good when they went to the WHL final against the Prince Albert Raiders there in 2019. So, and they had Kamloops' number, and then the next year Kamloops had their number. So it's just the BC division goes back and forth.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how big of a baseball fan you are, but I kind of liken the Victoria most years to like the Tampa Bay Rays. More than once, several times going into a season, you kind of look at their roster and you're not sure what to make of it. You're not sure who's going to grab them by the collar. Most years, they're going to have a goalie. It was Coleman Volrath to Griffin Outhouse to Shane Farkas. This year, Adam Ivanoff, even though he's had a tough year numbers wise because there's not much in front of him this year because they were given a really tough hand with having, I believe, 9 19-year-olds on their roster last year, and they didn't have the opportunity to make moves for most of those 19s. And so they ended up losing most of their veterans for nothing. And this year they have a rookie-heavy roster. But with them, like you were saying, with the balance in that division year to year, Kamloops and Kelowna, you can usually count on them being in the top somewhere. Vancouver, the last few years, they went through a number of years where they weren't a big factor, but now that they are, and of course they made the final in 19, and then Victoria usually finds a way to manufacture a scrappy team that can. They're kind of like that pitcher that doesn't have great stuff, but then you look up in the 7th inning and he's throwing a 2-hitter. That's kind of how they beat you most years. And I'm sure they have some decisions to make, but it wouldn't surprise me if they get back to that. But like you were talking about with the difficulty with going there to playing on the island, teams usually go out for a 2-game set. And it's tough to beat a team twice in a row in the same building. But that's a two-edged sword because it's tough for Victoria too. They have a hard time going on streaks at home because it's the same thing for them. If they beat Kelowna, their arch rival, on Friday night, there's probably going to be some bad blood that pops up late in the third period, and that's gonna rile up Kelowna, and they're gonna come out harder on the Saturday night. Yeah. And it's tough to win that second game. So they usually end up being about a 500 team at home just because it's hard to double up teams. And the other team in that division that has trouble with travel is Prince George. They live they play about 8 or 9 hours north of anybody. So the bus hours for Prince George is unbelievable. And there's been a couple of times that they've had really good first halves or even first 20 games or so. But you see them slowly fade in the second half most years. So yeah, a couple of interesting situations out west for sure.
Yeah, it's like you said about the travel for PG. They're obviously it's about a 7-hour bus ride from Kamloops to PG, so it's not like they can go play a quick home and home with Kelowna like Kamloops can, or Kamloops can have with Kelowna, or Kelowna could have even with Vancouver. Like Victoria, and I guess Victoria could do that with Vancouver, but it's a long process. It's not just hopping on the bus and you're down the highway a few hours. Like you got to go over an ocean, then you got to drive into the mainland, then you got to come back and try to make the ferry on that night after the game and stuff. But no, I feel that there has to be a way for these teams to be competitive and be winning teams, but still have those travel restrictions. Like there has to be some person out there that is an expert in this sort of thing that can lend a hand to help these teams, because for many years Prince George has just done nothing. And I have, for some reason, I have a soft spot for PG because I'm a big Taylor Gauthier fan, and it's tough for me to watch a team that has an NHL alum being one of the part owners of the team in can't even remember his name at the moment. He used to play for the Vancouver Canucks. But anyways, he, just to have all this great talent and people that know hockey there, and them just to not be able to produce or make up, and be a contender in the BC division, but they have that advantage just like as Victoria has. They have, because teams mostly come up there, they play 2 games and they rarely ever win both of them or none of them, because Prince George is a hard place to play in because you got to travel for hours on end to get there. And, that's kind of went off topic talking about Trent Miner, and it led into a whole BC division spiel. But that's kind of the the joys of talking about the WHL. I could have a whole show on the BC division or the US division or the obviously we have a show about the Saskatchewan the East division, but
it's easy for me to
yeah.
get going on both of those divisions because, as we've referenced in past episodes, I'm out in Victoria now, based out here. Been following Victoria firsthand for a few years, and have been reporting on Saskatoon from a distance for a year or two, and have some things in the works that hopefully will be ready to announce fairly soon. But yeah, I have a lot of fondness for Saskatchewan and the sports towns out there, because my formative sports years were, as we've talked about before, in the Western Canadian Baseball League, and I was in Okotoks in Alberta, but we spent 2 big trips a year at least, plus playoffs, and we went to the playoffs every year. I got my 3 rings. So we spent I spent a lot of my formative sports years in Swift Current, Moose Jaw, Yorkton, Melville, Saskatoon. So when we're talking about the differences between the 2 road trips, I know them both really well, and I have a lot of fondness for both.
Yeah, no. And Jonathan, I just wanted to give a shout out for your show. Jonathan is the host of Behind the Mic here on ASTV. His show premieres every Friday night at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern time on ASTV. And while I have you here on the show, do you want to give us a little bit of a sneak peek about who you're having on this week?
Yeah, that's actually a great setup that I was going to miss if you didn't bring it up. So thanks for that.
No worries.
This week coming up, I have Dan O'Connor, the play-by-play voice for the Vancouver Giants. So we'll talk about his journey. He's called Junior B. He's called Junior A in the Saskatchewan League. And he's called games in Prince George. He's now with the Giants. So it'll be a mix of talking about his journey, but also getting the inside look at what the BC season has looked like, as they're splitting their hub between Kamloops and Kelowna, and we have our hopes to have a player appearance on that episode as well. It's not final yet, so I got to keep the name under my hat, but it's somebody that I'm familiar with from both Victoria and Saskatoon, and he's now in Vancouver, so any super fans might be able to connect the dots on that. Friday nights at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern. I have a sportscaster every week, and sometimes I have an athlete on with them. Sometimes I've done roundtables with old colleagues of mine. So it's a lot of fun. And all our updates go to the ASTV social pages. And if you want to follow me for more updates on my Twitter, I live on Twitter. Haji Speaks is my handle. If you want to interact with me on there, you can.
Well, Jonathan, it was great having you, us coming together and making this segment for the East Division Hubble Talk. I think we got three episodes or 3 editions of that segment on. So I just wanted to say thank you again, for coming on the show and doing this with me, or doing this together, I should say.
No, the thanks should be to you. I mean, it was a great idea. Loved it when we first came up with it, and excited about it from the get-go, kind of planning it out, and the execution of it has been a blast. It's been a lot of fun being able to do this with you. So all the thanks go to you, and really excited to be a part of your process as well, and excited to see how things go for you.
Well, I appreciate it, Jonathan. And like I said, Behind the Mic every Friday from 5 Pacific or 8 Eastern. Like you said, he has I think he's the only guy with the contact list of having TSN broadcasters, and he's Dan O'Connor in the WHL, and some of the people that he's been on the show. If you've ever missed any of his episodes and you want to relive the moments that and the people that he's had on his show, just pop over to ASTV's Facebook page or at astproductions.com, and you can search Behind the Mic, and it'll give you a whole repertoire of who he's had on. So again, Jonathan, thank you, and I guess we'll see you again possibly when we create another show together.
Sounds great, man. Looking forward to it.
Have a good night, Jonathan.
All right, see ya.
And that's a wrap for another of this week's episode of the Sask Sports Show here on ASTV. I just want to give a shout out to the sponsor of this show, Southwest Terminal. And I really hope you guys enjoyed it. There was a lot of hard work in, kind of deliberating what we wanted to do for that East Division Hubble Talk segment. Unfortunately, I didn't have a guest this week, but Jonathan and I, obviously, we can talk about the WHL for hours. So we were able to fill an hour and a half here. So I really hope you guys, enjoyed the show tonight. And obviously, for some people, it's a sad ending to the East Division Subway Hub Center there in Regina. And I imagine a lot of people, especially those 20-year-olds, are going to, it's going to be bittersweet for them to finish their career in the WHL. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the show tonight. Make sure to, if you missed the show, go on to ASTV's Facebook page or at astvproductions.com to catch any episode of the Sask Sports Show, as well as, you can follow me on Twitter at JayD Haughton or at Sask_show. I'm very lively on Twitter and Facebook that I've, since having the show, I've become very, I would say, lively on social media. So you can always connect with me during a show or after a show. And if you want to be on the show, that's all right too. You can message me at my Twitter handle is at JayD Haughton. So hope you guys enjoyed the show, and I hope you have a good night, and we'll see you next week.